Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. What did you think of the Death of Stalin? Well, breaking news. First of all, my name is Scott Mantz, and breaking news for you. The Death of Stalin in just 4 theaters in New York and Los Angeles made $181,000 in just 4 theaters. That is the best specialty box office of 2018 so far. And obviously you love the film, so did the critics. It has a whopping 96% positive on Rotten Tomatoes. That is very, very much certified fresh. And we have a great panel for you today. So thank you so much for coming out to today's special screening. Please welcome, he is a Golden Globe nominee for The State Within. And you can see him right now on CBS All Access as the captain of the Starship Discovery on Star Trek Discovery. Please welcome Jason Isaacs. And next guest, he is an Emmy nominee for his outstanding work on Homeland, especially that last season. Please welcome Rupert Friend. And he is an Oscar nominee for his screenplay for In the Loop, which I saw here. And he's also an Emmy winner. He's an Emmy-winning writer-producer of Veep. Let's hear it for Veep. Please welcome Armando Iannucci. Okay, let's do this again. We were here yesterday doing this, you know.
Yeah, I was sleeping over there. There we are.
So the first question really for Armando is, so tell me, how did the source material come your way, and what exactly was the source material for Death of Stalin?
Strangely enough, was a French graphic novel called The Death of Stalin, but based on true events. So the book opens with a concert, and then Stalin falling over, and the Politburo coming around and worrying about doctors, and all these events are true. And I'd been thinking, having done Veep, I thought I wanted to do something about a dictator, a fictional dictator. But when I got sent this graphic novel, why are people chucking at the idea of a fictional dictator? And I read it, and it's exactly the story I wanted to tell. And it's true, and it's mad, it's crazy, it's horrifying. It's sad, and yet it's all true. And instantly, the moment I read it, I thought, this is it. This is the film I want to make.
Well, what did you guys think of the screenplay when you first read it? Jason, let's start with you.
It was crap, I thought. No, it was. I just thought, what a sick and twisted person. This whole thing is going to go down in flames.
You're talking about Stalin, aren't you?
Yeah.
Not,
No, I'm talking about the director.
This is a disastrous idea. I'm laughing at it, but that's because I'm disturbed. But then look who's in it. Look at all these amazing people who are in it. I'd like to go down on the ship with them. And if there's anybody who could steer a course through it being potentially massively offensive and a disaster, it's Armando, who I've been a fan of since, when I was in kindergarten, you were about 40. So, no, we're the same age. When I came out of university, Armando was already kind of leapfrogged to the top of the kind of comedy sphere in Britain. So I was a huge fan. I thought, if anyone knows how to navigate their way through these choppy waters, it's him. It was brilliant, but very, very risky.
How about for you, Rupert?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of doing a farce about a genocide is audacious. And I like audacious. I like risk takers. And I, like Jason, had been a huge fan of Armando since I was before puberty. And there's an image.
There is, yeah.
And so, yeah, for me, it was also, I was pretty much, I think, the last person to join. So I already had this incredible roster of talent lined up, and all I had to do was just say, where do I go?
You know, Armando, I want to ask, when you look at In the Loop and definitely Veep and now The Death of Stalin, you know, whether it's here or there is sort of a through line of tragic comedy that goes along with politics.
Yes.
What is it that you really don't have to tweak it that much to find the comedy in this stuff?
No, I mean, I suppose with Veep, you know, if she makes a mistake, if Selena Meyer makes a mistake, you know, it's embarrassing, but, you know, she survives. With this, it's if you make a mistake, you're dead. That's the, and that actually, it doesn't just stretch a bit further. It just completely transforms the whole vibe. Really, I mean, the comedy here is comedy of it's a sort of hysteria. It's a panic. And what I wanted to try and do in the film was to get people, yes, to laugh through it, but also to have an underlying sense of anxiety all the way through, because I wanted to try and replicate what it must have felt like to grow up in the Soviet Union at that time, and to every day just not knowing, how you're getting through the day and whether you'll make it through the night, so it was about that really.
Okay, so the movie was filmed when compared to November 8th, 2016?
Okay.
Good question. Here we go.
The event, as I like to call it. It was filmed in the summer of 2016. So when,
Nightmare?
Pre-Trump's, it's still in
He wasn't
Trump's.
even the candidate. He wasn't even the candidate at that
Still,
point,
it's
was
still in Trump's puberty. Before he was.
Oh, that's a horrible image.
Before he was a nominee. Because, but I had thought, the reason I was making the film was because I thought something odd is happening around the world in countries that call themselves democracies. Strange things are happening, strange movements, populism, nationalism, the electorate's getting very frustrated and angry, and so something's about to blow. Basically, yeah. I thought, so let's do this as a kind of, light-hearted look back at previous governments that then blew, and not knowing that, when I was editing it and when it was going to be released, it would be in the middle of the strangest period in American politics for a long time.
So when the film is done, basically, and, you've gone back to watch it, what was your take, Rupert and Jason, on just sort of how much it really takes place in 1953, but it's so relevant for 2018?
Well, first of all, as Armando said, we shot it in the summer of 2016 when Brexit had just happened. And I had a day off and I went to France to commemorate the 100 years of the Battle of the Somme, the day after David Cameron had resigned. And David Cameron was there, sitting amongst all the presidents and prime ministers of Europe and heads of the armed forces. And he made a beeline to talk to me because I think he was too embarrassed to talk to anybody else. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm doing this film about Stalin and how when he died there was an ugly scrabble for power and how venal and kind of backstabbing everybody was." And he said, "Oh, they stabbed them in the back there because in Downing Street they're stabbing each other in the face." So it applies so perfectly to Brexit, just as it applies to somebody came out of the audience the other day and thanked Armando for making the film about Mugabe's Zimbabwe. And for me, the parallels with today's America are obviously prevalent, but it applies almost any time, anywhere. But particularly, what comes to mind is that grotesque freak show of the press conference that Trump held, so that everybody had to pay fealty or obeisance to him, and went along, and all these men of real substance who'd done things in their life, some of them at least, had to say, "I just thank the Lord I was born in the era of this great, great man, that he shines his benevolent light upon me and allows me to serve him." And I couldn't fucking believe what I was watching each time, and that they all went through with it, although clearly they're all gagging back on sick while they were doing it. And I think the shadow of that cult of personality is so clear and manifest in this film. So I wouldn't make facetious comparisons between Trump and Stalin. Thank God, not yet. But certainly the way that they all behave, even when he's gone, and the fact that they've lost their moral compass. They're so complicit that they can never find themselves again.
When
I think
saw
that comes off
I saw
the
that
screen.
meeting, that cabinet meeting, the thing that was going through my mind was unanimously. That's what. Just seeing that, that was the thing that sprung to mind.
The comedy. I've seen both of you just do amazing work, but I've never seen, especially Rupert, after that last season of Homeland. Jesus, I need a drink. How invigorating, exhilarating was it to embrace a farce, a comedy like this?
I hope you can tell. I loved it. It was. I loved, again, talking about risk taking. Armando being very kind of upfront about, "I've never seen you do this," which could mean, and I don't know if you can.
Right, no.
But I took it to mean, great. Well, let's see. And so we kind of jumped into the sandbox together, and I just had the best time.
watching the film, just especially with a crowd of people, like, yeah, everybody sort of plays it so straight. But how did you keep a straight face for a while doing comedy, especially because it's not something you've done a whole lot of?
He didn't.
I didn't much. I couldn't look at many of them in the eyes while I was doing it. The fact is that it doesn't really apply to me, but all the characters are terrified. Yeah. They're all terrified all the time. They're going to say or do the wrong thing. Acting is a pretty simple job. We see children do it in the garden every day. It's just you have to try and imagine being that person in that situation. If you do it halfway well, you're over the 50% line. So you're not outside it, watching yourself enjoying it. But every now and again, something's just too fucking funny, and you laugh. And guess what? Armando cuts those bits out.
Yes. Well, or we had to use special effects too. Steve Buscemi does burst into laughter just at that bit where they're around the body and he says, swap, we'll make it look part of the ceremony. And he does that very elegant move. And then as soon as Jeffrey goes, what the fuck are you doing? Steve just goes... And we had to it was the best take, so we had to spend a bit of money on just turning the smile into a frown.
One of my regrets, I've seen the film now lots of times to different audiences, there's that fantastic line that Armando wrote, which is, did Coco Chanel take a shit on your head? But it gets such a big laugh that you miss Jeffrey slightly thrown by going, no, he did not. It kills me when people miss that. I love that. I couldn't look at him when he said that.
I remember you sent me, you getting into the fun of it, you sending me from your trailer a video of you practicing spitting so it landed on your face. And it is the most disgusting video I've ever been sent. But I have kept it.
Yeah, it's real.
That's real spit. That is genuine Rupert friend DNA. There.
Yeah, I want to ask. There's a line in the film. Trust no one, and it's not the X-Files. This is a line that you could say in The Loop, in Veep. Everyone is after themselves. The backstabbing, the betrayal, just like Hollywood. But what is it about? What is it about politics, especially depicted in Death of Stalin, that just makes it so ripe?
Well, it's such a kind of core story, isn't it? It's the battle for succession, which is, it's Game of Thrones and Shakespeare history plays and ancient Rome and
Empire,
Godfather and
Empire, the rap. It's
everything.
Dallas was.
We love it, really. And the higher the stakes, then the more fascinating it is. And this is true, and the stakes are extremely high, So for me, it just felt like, and a lot of my comedy is about that thing of making it feel real. So it's not just comedy for the sake of jokes, right, but actually to reveal how people behave under pressure or in extraordinary circumstances and so on. So this, to me, it certainly took me out of my comfort zone making this, because I haven't made a historical film before or a story based on real people. And I knew there would be scenes that would be not funny, deliberately not funny. And I just knew we had to play those and shoot those as sort of intensely as the scenes where we're working on the comedy. Because you work really hard on a comedy. It's all about putting a lot of effort into making something then look effortless. So all the hard work goes in the rehearsals. We had spent a while rehearsing in advance to get everything absolutely right so that it works as a comedy.
So that it looks improvised. Lots of people seem to think that it's improvised, but actually almost nothing that you saw was improvised. Very bare moments, apart from that scene where you sent us into the barn and deliberately didn't want to choreograph it. So just go into the barn, get the scene done in 2 minutes. And there's people going, but I've got 3 pages of dialogue. And so just get it all over in 2 minutes and then shoot him. Yeah. And there was madness and chaos and anarchy that he deliberately created.
But we find things as well, like your extended fight with your which after several takes we just thought it's quite funny if we just leave it. So and it was the noises you were making as well.
Let's talk a little more about the rehearsal process. I know the cast is terrific, but you're not all in it at the same time. Was everybody present for the rehearsal?
Not every. I mean, you were all coming off other things and were abroad, so actually you weren't around for the early rehearsals.
We weren't invited, I think is what I'm trying to say. No, you're right. The Politburo rehearsed together because they spend all the time together.
Yeah, yeah. Because I wanted all Stalins in a circle. I wanted them to act like they had worked with each other for years, because that's what these guys had. They'd butchered and they'd survived doing Stalin's dirty work for at least 20 years. So that's why. And so we did 2 weeks of rehearsals to allow everyone to kind of map the story out, but also just to get to know everyone else and everyone else's character.
I meant to ask you this yesterday. Like, why didn't you have the cast at least have a Russian-infused accent?
Because I just felt that's going to make it feel not here and not now. It's going to make it feel, in a country far away, and also I think the spontaneity that I wanted would be hampered by if people trying to think of. And also the other question is which Russian accent, because there's more than one. There's hundreds. In fact, this was the Soviet Union, so it wasn't just Russia. Stalin and Beria were from Georgia, so they spoke a completely different language. Khrushchev was from Ukraine, so already, if you start going down that road, and also it just feels unnatural, strangely enough.
Well, they would be if you're speaking with a dialect, then you're speaking your second language.
Yeah.
But none of them are speaking their second language. They're speaking their own language. So it would be a very weird choice, I think, if they spoke with a foreign dialect, because then none of them are comfortable.
And Russian journalists who saw it said to me, "Thank you," because we hate it when bad Russian accents are kind of deployed. So they said, no, we get it.
Might be the only thing that's harder than a Boston accent is a Russian accent, as making it sound natural.
And the tone, you can't tell tonally. One of the first questions I got asked in London at a screening was from a Russian who said, "You make Stalin funny. What other tragedy you make comedy?" And I thought he was like having a real go, but he came out afterwards and said he thought it was hilarious. But just his tone, I felt, I just couldn't determine whether he was, So now imagine that all the way through the film. It would be 3 hours long to start with, because it's half the pace and everything.
Well, I want to throw it to the audience. I'm sure you have questions, and you're first. You.
Yes. Great film, my favorite kind of film, so thank you so much for making it.
All right, next.
But the entrance that really got me, and I want to ask you, head of the Army, how did you feel when you finally watched it? It's all done. Your entrance. As the head of the Army, that was so powerful and cool.
Yeah, that's great.
I don't know if did you hear that? Just how did he?
Feel when you first saw it?
Well, I was there when we shot it. So that's the thing. So I remembered it a little bit. What I remembered was looking at the still on Wikipedia of Zhukov and thinking, "Fuck me, he's got 10,000 medals on. That's already hilarious." So when I got to the set, and I had to get them to, because he had a big barrel chest, I got them to puff the jacket out and stuff it full of fake boobs and stuff, and then stuff the arms as well, because they look like noodles. So I had this giant, big Pamela Anderson kit on and a bunch of medals. And Armando is smart enough and nimble enough. It might all be prepared and written, but he spots an opportunity when he sees one. And we go, "Oh, wait a second, let's shoot that in slow motion." So I knew it was shot in slow motion. So it wasn't a surprise. It was just every bit as good as I'd hoped it'd be.
Oh, you know what? Since you're sitting right up front.
There we go. This will work. Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hello.
I saw in the credits that you filmed in London and Moscow. Were you able to take any of the actors and film in Moscow? Because I know sometimes with the clearance.
No, we did. We shot most of the actors were in London, but we went to Moscow to research the scenes and get the look, and we tried to replicate as much as possible. Then we shot for Kiev in Ukraine for a week, and that's where you saw the riots and the street disturbances, the roundings up, the cars and the trains and so on. And then we did 2 days in Moscow just to get the exteriors of Red Square and so there were no actors. We were very light in Moscow with most of the film in the can already. So there was nothing they could do.
Apart from ban it.
Yes, well.
Okay.
So I know you said there's not a lot of improv, but Steve and Jeff, they tend to add some stuff. Or did you guys ever, since when you were routing at people, did you add your own sense to it?
So how much improv was in?
Yeah.
Then?
Yeah, I mean, I remember the ice skating thing. It wasn't written that he goes on the ice. And then I sort of showed Armando, I put skates on, And he just, go, do it. So then all that happens there with them all just trying to play around this idiot is,
Did you genuinely not know the rules? Was that why
Genuinely.
was that
I
why
have
you were
no
going,
idea what
hit
the
it,
rules
take it, give it?
Is there, Armando, is there a sort of a lesson, like again, this through line that you're showing in Veep and in the Loop and with this, is there like some sort of lesson that you want people to, or even politicians, whoever sees these movies, to get?
I mean, it's difficult to sum up both Veep and this, since they're so different in terms of the world. But I suppose it's that thing of don't be, don't think that because a government building looks grand, that people inside it know exactly what they're doing, because they don't. But on the other hand, don't think because we have a democracy that it's perfect and it's permanent, because it has to be continually protected and analysed and committed to. Otherwise, things like that happen.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, even though the movie is doing well, in order for it to keep doing well, spread the word. And how do you do that? On social media. So make sure you go on Facebook, go on Twitter, go on Instagram. I've got a few you're still using MySpace back there. Go for it. Please spread the word about the Death of Stalin. Armando, Rupert, Jason, thank you so much for being here today.
Cheers. Thank you.